Welcome to the All Things Nintendo podcast. I'm Brian Shea, and this is a weekly podcast to discuss all the biggest news and games from the world of Nintendo. You may recall that I was out of the country a couple of weeks ago, which meant being late to the party with the Nintendo Direct news, and during last week's episode, I said it was to play Pokémon Go, which I would say is half true. The real reason I went to Paris, however, was to get my hands on Pokémon Legends ZA. And the same could be said for my guest last week, and the same could be said for my guest this week. Coming to us from GameSpot, it is senior video producer Jake Dekker. Jake, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. I was listening to last week's episode, and I noticed you said you were there for Pokemon Go, and I was like, that's not quite true, but, you know, embargo information and all that.
Yeah, we were told we could not tell people we were in Paris for Pokémon Legends ZA until September 24th. So we could talk about Pokemon Go and like the stamp rally that they had us take part in while we were over there immediately. We could live stream it if we wanted to. So I was like, yeah, I'll just use that as an excuse for why Tim Geddes and I were over in Paris together. But Jake, you were there as well. And you got your hands on Pokemon Legends ZA. You played some Pokemon Go with us, and we gallivanted about the city of Paris, eating some great food, hanging out. We went to Disneyland. It was a great time had by all. And I'm excited to chop up your impressions on Pokemon Legends ZA.
I'm still thinking about those steak frites we had at that one place. I don't remember the name, but I remember the taste. It was so good.
I actually found a recipe for the sauce and like the way that they prepare the steak frites. So I am going to attempt to replicate that. If you follow me on Instagram, you know I love like cooking and all that stuff. So it's going to be tough because it's a very involved sauce, it turns out, but I'm going to brave that situation at one point here in the near future. But that's not what we're here to talk about, Jake. We're going to be talking about Pokemon Legends ZA. We're going to be talking about Hades 2. We're going to be talking about some monumental Nintendo news that has come out in the last hour, really, before jumping into this call. So it's very fresh in our minds. But before we get to the news, we have a time-honored tradition. Every time we have a debuting guest on All Things Nintendo, we get to know them through the lens of their history with Nintendo. So the first part of this question is, what is your favorite, I've done this enough times, you think I'd be able to say it without stumbling all over myself. What is your first Nintendo game? It's, interpret it any way you want. It could be your first memory with Nintendo, first time you picked up a console, first time you bought a game, whatever you want to go with here.
Sure. Well, the first Nintendo game I owned was Pokemon Red. So I think this is a very good episode for me to be on. I got Pokemon Red with a Game Boy Color, which was also the first console I ever had. So Pokemon holds a very, very special place in my heart, particularly that Gen 1 Pokemon Red. I frequently go back to Gen 1, not necessarily Pokemon Red. Fire Red is kind of my go-to these days. But yeah, I mean, couldn't pick a better episode to have me on, I'd say.
Yeah, I have to ask, was it the translucent purple Game Boy Color?
It was. It was
Mine
the translucent purple, and it was I think my parents got it at Costco. The whole deal was I had to pay for it, but I really, really, really wanted one, and I didn't have the money. So they were like, all right, we're going to take your allowance every week until this is paid off. And I'm sure they only did it for a couple weeks. And they're like, all right, fine, that's enough. But yeah, I got the Costco pack with that in Red. And oh my God, I loved it ever since. Like, I lost hundreds and hundreds of hours every time I traveled anywhere with my parents in the back of the car, playing Pokemon Red, catching everything, rebattling the Elite Four over and over and over and over and over again. Probably didn't read a lick of the dialogue, just tapped day through all of it. But yeah, holds a very special place in my heart.
Yeah, I mean, I got that same Game Boy Color and Pokemon Blue for Christmas that year.
Oh, okay.
So I had gotten into Pokemon via the anime, via the TCG, and it was kind of taking over my middle school at the time. And I was like, all right, let's see what this Pokemon thing is about. And like my friend was like, oh yeah, there's a cartoon that's on every weekday at it was 3:30 or something. 3 or 3:30, something like that. So it was right when I got home from school. And so I turned it on and it was a really weird episode. I think it was like the Diglett and Doug Trio episode, and there were some very
Okay.
weird moments in that episode. And I was like, that was kind of strange, but something about it really hit like a strange part of my brain that I didn't know existed. And so I watched it again and again. I became obsessed with it. I started buying Pokemon cards, even though I didn't know
Hmm.
like who most of the characters were. And then probably by the time that I actually got Game Boy Color and Pokemon Blue, I had memorized all the Pokemon from 1 to 151, and which because that's all there was back then.
Yep.
To the younger audience listening to this, yeah, at one point there was only 151 Pokemon, and I had memorized all of them. I think I could imitate all of the digitized cries that they did in the game. I was very popular in school, in case you can't tell, and yeah, I had Pokemon cards that I had been amassing, and that's really my entry point into it. But yeah, it was really off to the races once I got that Game Boy Color, and Pokemon Blue was my first RPG ever. So I
Oh
think
wow. Yeah.
we're aligned in that way as well.
Now I have to ask, at your school, did they start making up rules about Pokemon? Like you can't bring Pokemon cards to school, you can't
Mm-hmm.
do this, because I remember when I was very young, there was a while where the teachers had no idea what was happening with Pokemon. They didn't get it. And after a while, I think the teachers got so annoyed they made all these rules like you can only bring your Pokemon cards for like before school and after school. You can't take them out. And I feel like everyone I've talked to who grew up around that same time had similar rules in place at their school.
Yeah, Pokemon cards I think were the first to be banned, which started a whole like let's just make our own cards. So we would take like the index cards that we bought for like creating flashcards and stuff,
Yeah,
and we started like making like
I
these
love that.
bootleg like hand drawn Pokemon cards. And we during homeroom we would just battle using those, but it was like the exact same stats and names and
Yeah,
everything. So like it was the same thing, just not like actually bringing the real cards into homeroom. So we found
that's
ways
funny.
around it.
I have to imagine the teachers are like, all right, this is not what we meant. We meant go outside and play.
But we found our workaround, and jokes on them because I'm not in school anymore. But Pokemon still persists. So who really
Yeah,
won the war?
yeah. I think we did. Absolutely.
We defeated education, as there's in many facets of that statement. So
Yeah.
that brings us to the second part of this question, which is, what is your favorite Nintendo game of all time?
This is a tough one. So when you sent me those questions, this is the one that I had the most trouble coming up with an answer for. I think probably the easy answer for me would be Super Smash Bros. Melee.
Mm,
I remember playing a lot of Super Smash Bros. 64 as a kid. I ended up convincing my parents into letting me get a Nintendo 64. But when I saw the leap between 64 to Melee, my mind was blown.
hmm
The character roster, all the different stages, the different rule sets, the challenges, everything in that game just blew me away. And from that moment on, I knew I needed a Nintendo GameCube, which I think was a feeling that not many people felt. Because from what I
hmm
remember, as fondly as I look back on the GameCube, I don't think that console was hugely popular, at least compared to some of Nintendo's other consoles. But I needed that console, and I played the hell out of Melee. And since then, like Smash Bros, there's probably the games I look forward to most out of Nintendo's portfolio. I would say the other answer is Link to the Past. I think
Oh,
that is also a very easy answer. But I actually didn't play it when it came out. I ended up playing it on GBA years later when they did the Four Swords Link to the Past collection, and immediately, I had played Ocarina of Time. I played Majora's Mask. I think at that point I'd even played Wind Waker. Uh, but when I had played that, that's when I understood Zelda. Like it all made sense, and I was like, I get why this is one of the best franchises game series of all time.
yeah, I mean, and you have to look no further than A Link to the Past as like one of the most perfectly designed video games of all time. I know several people are
Exactly.
like, Link to the Past is the greatest game of all time, and I know that I think we finally lost former Game Informer editor Dan Tack on that side of the argument when
Mm.
Elden Ring came out, and then he was like, okay, Elden Ring I think is a more perfect game than A Link to the Past, which I would I don't know. It's close, but I would argue maybe still for Link to the Past.
I'm still leaning towards Link to the Past. I think there's something so like simplistic and beautiful about that game, and frankly, that era, that like SNES 2D era, the art style, the gameplay, it all felt so tight. I mean, at least the ones we remember. Like Super Metroid is another all timer for me. I
Mm-hmm.
absolutely adore that game, and I think it just goes to show how timeless those games, especially that Super NES era, are.
Yeah, and I think on your point about the GameCube, that might be, in terms of home consoles, not talking about handhelds, in terms of home consoles, that might be the least excited I've ever been for a Nintendo console. And I had it, but like, I don't know, like Mario Sunshine has never really done it for me. I was one of those kids that I saw Wind Waker and I was like, that's not what I want from like the game that
Hmm.
follows Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. I want something more serious, like the Space World demo that they gave,
Yeah.
showing like a realistic Link fighting a realistic Ganondorf. Like that's what I want. Nowadays, like I've gone back and I've played Wind Waker as an adult and been like, okay, yeah, this is probably a top 5 Zelda for me. So like I don't have any problems with it now, but like back then I wasn't super on board with it. And Luigi's Mansion just was like a whatever game to
Hmm.
me as a kid. So like I didn't get like the Mario 64 successor that I wanted. I didn't get the Ocarina of Time successor that I wanted.
Sure.
And so it's just kind of like a whatever console for me at first. And then eventually when I did get it and I started playing games like Double Dash and Melee, it was like, okay, yeah, this is a very
Hmm.
good console. And then the Wii kind of like started getting me back on board with Nintendo more and more. And honestly, I really like the Wii U, even though like I acknowledge
Hmm.
its shortcomings. I think it has an incredible library.
Yeah.
But yeah, like between the DS, the Wii, and the Wii U and the 3DS, like that's what really got me full on back in. Like, okay, yeah, Nintendo is my jam. Like
Hmm.
it was obviously NES, SNES, N64. Those were my favorite consoles of their respective generations. So it was really only the GameCube that like lagged behind for me in
Hmm.
that regard. But yeah, I mean those are solid choices. Melee. What's your thought on Ultimate in terms of how it compares to Melee? I think we talked about this a little bit in Paris, didn't we?
Yeah. I mean, Ultimate is my go-to now. Like, I never boot up Melee anymore. I'm never, as much as I loved Melee, I never got super competitive into it, and I wasn't really there for like all of those intricate, move sets that people would do. That said, I found Ultimate to be more accessible. I got more into the competitive side in Ultimate, and that to me, I think is probably the better game. But I think as a kid, nothing compares to what Melee was when I first saw that. It just blew my mind. I didn't realize they could do that much with Super Smash Bros. And of course, Ultimate, kind of blew that out of the water. But there's just something that I don't know. I think it's just the time. There's something special about Melee that was it for me. I saw that and I was like, I need a GameCube. I need it because this is the best game I've ever I've ever seen.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And it's almost like if you were to see like it's kind of like how I've always talked about how Ocarina of Time was my favorite game of all
Mhm.
time until Breath of the Wild kind of came along and
Sure.
blew it out of the water and like made it like, oh yeah, this is a like next level of what Ocarina of Time was able to do back in like 98.
Yeah.
So like I get what you're saying. Like Ocarina of Time, when the first time you went out into Hyrule Field, you're like, oh my God, this is endless.
Hmm.
And then if you look at it today, you're like, this is actually a pretty small area, guys.
Pretty small. Yeah, there's something about nostalgia, right? I know it gets
Mhm.
talked about a lot, especially I imagine on a Nintendo podcast and when you're talking about Nintendo. And I can look, logically at something like Breath of the Wild, something like Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, something like Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, and I can look at that and say, yes, those are the best versions of those games, right? Breath of the Wild is probably my favorite Zelda game of all time, even though I just said, you know, A Link to the Past is my favorite. I think, when I look at it, I think it's probably Breath of the Wild. But there's something about that nostalgia that's just, it's hard to beat. And it's, being in a time and place when you're a kid and everything's so exciting and unique. It's different outlook.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we go over to the news, we already covered the Nintendo Direct pretty extensively
Mhm.
last week, so we're not going to dwell on it too much. But real quick, did you have a favorite announcement from the Direct?
Uh, hmm. I think my favorite was. Uh, I mean, I think the thing I'm most excited for is Metroid Prime.
Hmm.
Uh, 4. I forget the name. What is it? Metroid Prime
Beyond.
4 Beyond. I'm a big fan of that series. I've been waiting for Metroid Prime Beyond for many, many years, as I'm sure many, many people have been. But I think the biggest surprise and the thing that I'm really excited for is Poketopia. And I know we're
Yeah.
here to talk about Pokemon, but something about that just got me really excited. I really like the style it's going for. I like the idea of that you're playing as a very weird and unsettling Ditto. I'm curious to see how all of these Pokemon kind of live together in this town you build and how their different moves kind of affect how you can grow the town. I think there's something to be excited about, at least for me, for Poketopia.
Yeah, I am a big fan of the original Dragon Quest builders, and I
Hmm.
also enjoy Animal Crossing. So this seems kind of like a hybrid between those two with the Pokemon license wrapped around it. So I'm here for that one as well. That's one of the first things that comes to mind for me when you ask me what like my most anticipated is from that
Hmm.
direct. It's like that Tomodachi Life. I'm a big fan of the Tomodachi Life series, or at least that first 3DS game.
That
Um,
trailer was beautiful. It
it's
was so
amazing.
good.
And yeah, like those are some of the ones that I'm really excited for. But what letter grade would you give it? The direct as a whole?
uh, hmm. I think I think probably a C plus, maybe a B minus.
Okay.
I feel like this direct didn't have any really big hitters for me. I think the thing that I was really kind of expecting and hoping for was for a new Animal Crossing. Didn't get that, but like I said, we kind of got that in
Pokopia.
Poketopia. Pokopia. I keep saying Poketopia because it rolls off the tongue better. Uh, but I feel like Nintendo is kind of playing the slow game a little. Everything they showed off right is coming out in the next within the next year, 6 months ish. And I really like that approach. I much prefer that to them announcing things coming out years and years and years from now. Uh,
Like
so
Metroid
if
Prime.
that's like Metroid Prime is a great example. So if that's the trade off, I'm okay with that. I feel like while this direct didn't speak directly to me, I feel like there very soon will be one. And I say that as like a huge Fire Emblem fan. I'm very excited to see what they do next with Fire Emblem, and I was excited for the continuation of Three Houses. Uh, that said, like Fire Emblem just doesn't get me super excited until I'm actually have it in my hand and playing it.
Hmm. Yeah, I always want to try Fire Emblem, and I try it, and then the only one I've gotten into really is Awakening, and I hear
Which
everybody
is
say like, "Oh,
the
you got to
best
play Three
one.
Houses, you got to play Three Houses," and I don't know, I struggle to get into them, and I think it's because the starts of those games are so slow
Yes.
that I get to a point where I just kind of bounce off it and I go play something else. And it's not out of like disinterest. It's just out of like, man, I need something faster right now. And I know
Yeah.
that if I stuck with it, I would become absolutely obsessed. But there's just, I don't know, something about it that makes it difficult for me to really jump in with both feet. But
I get that. I mean, especially, if a new Fire Emblem game came out right now in the midst of all these crazy releases, I don't know if I'd have the time to dedicate to it, right?
well, do I have news for you, which we're going to get into in a second. But before we jump into that news, just a reminder, you are listening to the All Things Nintendo podcast. This show arrives to your podcast feeds completely free each and every week. But if you'd like to support me and allow me to keep on making these episodes, you can join the Patreon for as little as $3 a month. That gets you access to the community Discord, which grants priority access to Q&A episodes. But there are also $5 and $10 tiers that get you things like early and ad-free episodes, plus shout outs at the end of every show. Just go to patreon.com and search All Things Nintendo. It would really help me continue to do this show if you're able to join up. All right, Jake, let's get into some of the news that has happened since last episode. And I had this outline all written out, all ready to go. And then I get out of a meeting with a Game Informer meeting, and immediately upon exiting said meeting, I get an email from Nintendo saying Doug Bowser bids farewell to the Mushroom Kingdom as the subject line. And so I don't have it in the outline here, but I do have some quotes from Doug Bowser. But basically, the gist of it is Doug Bowser, who's president and COO of Nintendo of America, has announced he is retiring from the company effective December 31st, 2025. And he is going to be succeeded by Devin Pritchard, who has been at Nintendo for 19 years. And she is going to take over Doug's role at the start of 2026. So, pretty big news there. But also on top of that, Satoru Shibata, who is currently with NCL, which is Nintendo's Japanese side, is going to join NOA, Nintendo of America, as CEO, while still continuing his roles at NCL, the Japanese side, which are managing executive officer, corporate director, and member of the board. And then in addition to that, Devin Pritchard will also join the Nintendo of America board of directors and become a Nintendo of Japan executive officer. So we got some quotes here that I'm going to go over here. So that's the main news from that. But here's a quote that I saw from Doug that immediately piqued my interest here. It says, "One of my earliest video game experiences was playing the arcade version of Donkey Kong." So there we go. First Nintendo game from Doug Bowser himself. Since that time, pause for dramatic effect, all things Nintendo have continued to be a passion for both me and my family. Doug, first of all, thank you so much for the shout out in your farewell quote, plugging the podcast. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. I guess maybe he did see me. Coming back from Japan in this is a long walk for a very short slide here. But I was in Japan last year for what would have been our Metaphor Refantasio cover story. And I got into the Delta Lounge because my flight was canceled and I had to go a day later home. And they upgraded me to Delta One. And I walk into the Delta Lounge in Tokyo, and who's sitting there but Doug Bowser? So I walked past him. I didn't say anything to him because I was like, yeah, he's relaxing. He's just doing his thing. I don't want to bug him. But maybe I didn't know he was such an all things Nintendo fan. Maybe I should have said hi.
He's probably listening. Yeah, he's probably
listening right now.
Yeah.
It's just a coincidence that all and things are lowercase and only Nintendo's capitalized in this quote. He continues saying, "Leading Nintendo of America has been the honor of a lifetime, and I'm proud of what our team has accomplished in both business results and the experiences we've created for consumers." And then there's another one that says, quote, "Now it's time for the next generation of leadership, and Devin's track record speaks for itself. She is an exceptional leader, and her promotion is a testament to her strong performance and strategic contributions to the company's growth. I have full confidence that she will guide the company to even greater heights." And Devin Pritchard has a quote here where she says, "I'm humbled and excited to take on this new role. Doug has been a fantastic mentor, and I look forward to building on the incredible foundation he has helped establish. With characters and worlds that offer something for everyone, my focus will be continuing to build on Nintendo's legacy of surprising and delighting our longtime fans, while at the same time welcoming new players into the Nintendo family." Into the Nintendo is surprisingly difficult to say, I found just now. What do you make of this? Because this is very fresh for us as we're recording this episode, literally like an hour and a half old. Doug Bowser has been with Nintendo since 2015. He took over for Reggie Fils-Aimé in 2019 when Reggie announced his retirement. So Reggie basically ushered him out of the Wii U era and into the Switch era. Doug Bowser took over, grabbed that ball, picked it up, and ran with it. Obviously, a very, very successful 2020 with the explosion of Nintendo stuff everywhere during the lockdowns. And, around that time is also when they started opening theme parks, getting the Mario film together. So they've really done a lot under Doug Bowser's NOA leadership. But now, it feels like he is leaving and like, I don't know if maybe it's just because Reggie was there for so long at that post that it feels like we were just kind of getting to know Doug Bowser and now he's stepping away. But what do you make of this whole situation?
Yeah, it definitely came as a surprise to me. I was not expecting it. I think it's kind of weird because I had such a different parasocial relationship, I guess, with Reggie Fils-Aimé in a weird way because, he'd show up in those Nintendo Direct skits. He's got some lines I still quote, like his Animal Crossing one. And there was always something about Reggie Fils-Aimé that was very endearing. I'm sure, if you're on the other side of a meeting with him and he's angry at you, maybe he wasn't so endearing. But when Doug Bowser came in, apart from having the name Bowser, I felt like it, I don't know. It felt like such a hard. It felt like very big shoes to fill,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know if he filled them the same way that Reggie Fils-Aimé did. Uh, I do think, to your point, though, he has done quite a bit that I didn't necessarily think of. Like I've been to the Nintendo amusement park. I mean, I've only been to the one in Hollywood. I saw the Mario movie, but for some reason, I just kind of didn't even think about that kind of stuff. I was just thinking back, okay, well, the games, he was there for the Switch 2 launch and then kind of
Mm-hmm.
left as well. But it does feel pretty short. It does feel pretty short.
Yeah, 2019 to 2025, whereas Reggie was president of Nintendo of America from what, 2004 to 2019. So it's a
Sounds about right. Yeah.
substantially longer because he one of his first like things was introducing the DS, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or at least showing
Yeah.
it off at E3 one year when he came out and said, "My name is Reggie." What does he say? Like, I'm about kicking ass and we're about making games. Like that was like his
Yes.
first
Yeah.
like famous quote. So like he made a splash immediately, and Doug had a little skit in the E3 2019
Mm-hmm.
Nintendo Direct where it was like him and like a CGI Bowser like
Yeah.
interacting, which was a very cute thing. And like his first address from like his office, there was like in the background was like a Mario and Luigi plushie like on his shelf, but they were like tied up by rope.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, yeah, he's leaning into it, which is great. And
I forgot about that.
the first time I met him was at the Mario movie premiere back in 2023, and he was incredibly nice, incredibly gracious,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean, all indications were he's fantastic at his job. So it is a bummer
Mm-hmm.
to see him leaving, but it's also really exciting to see somebody like Devin Pritchard like step into this role and see what she can do with it.
Yeah, and I think this is probably an oversimplification, and I'm sure there's many more factors to it. But for me, I don't really think about the CEOs of these companies until they start to really mess up,
Yeah.
or do some like Phil Spencer is a good example of someone who had a lot of trust in the community for a long time there, but I feel like and I know not all those decisions come directly from Phil Spencer, but all these layoffs, all that kind of stuff has really sort of soured, my opinions on him as a CEO, not as a person. I don't know him personally. And I think probably, the thing with Nintendo is that they traditionally don't lay people off. So it's kind of hard for me to get frustrated with CEOs when they don't get laid off. So like I said, probably an oversimplification, but like I haven't thought too much about them because typically, when it's bad Nintendo news, it's usually a price hike,
Yeah. And I
which I'm
mean,
sure he is part of those discussions. But given the economy, given all the factors that I'm sure are out of Nintendo's control, it's hard to directly blame a person for that.
yeah. And
Well, there is a person in mind that I could blame, but
well, I mean, Doug also like it's partially because of like, Nintendo is inarguably the most talented development company to ever exist. But
yeah.
like, the Switch 2 has been one of the biggest successes in gaming history, or the Switch 1, I'm sorry, is one of the biggest
Mhm.
successes in gaming history. And the Switch 2 is off to a similar trajectory.
Yeah.
So it's like, like you're saying, like you hear about CEOs more when they're messing up. But like, if you look at like the quarterly and annual earnings statements that Nintendo's put out year over year, it's like, okay, yeah, he has clearly not messed up to the point that like
Yeah.
they have suffered in any kind of way, because this has been one of the most affluent eras of in Nintendo history under him. And yeah, I mean, I think that it's disappointing that he's stepping away. Not that like it's really going to impact us as much as like when somebody
Mhm.
like Shigeru Miyamoto steps away, but like it's still like, okay, yeah, we were kind of in a good rhythm with Doug
Yeah.
Bowser as CEO. Now that said, we might get into an even better place with Devin Pritchard, because by all indications, she's been at Nintendo for 19 years, which is longer than Doug Bowser's been
Mhm.
there, and she has a very good track record. Like one of her primary responsibilities right now is ensuring, like overseeing the sales of physical and digital media at Nintendo. And just to break this to you in the least shocking way possible, those numbers are pretty freaking good right now.
Yeah,
So I mean,
they
Nintendo
certainly
might be
are.
set up for some good times ahead still, and I mean the
Mhm.
Switch 2 is doing great still to this day. So Doug Bowser, solid 6 years in charge of Nintendo of
Mhm.
America, and it'll be interesting to see what, if anything, changes under Devin Pritchard. But excited to
Yeah.
learn more. Maybe following the trajectory of Reggie Fils-Aimé. He left in 2019, and then he appeared on All Things Nintendo, I think, in early 2022. So I guess
Okay.
we can look forward to Doug Bowser coming on All Things Nintendo in what, 3 years?
Yeah, 2028, 2029 maybe?
Yeah. So I'll book that show right now and just get that all lined up. But let's get into some game news here, Jake.
All right.
Borderlands 4. It's a game that I have been hyping up ever since I had the chance to play it pre-release. I went to both 2K's offices in Novato, California, and Gearbox's in Frisco, Texas. And then when it came out, I would say I overall enjoyed my time with it. I gave it an
Mhm.
8.5 over on Game Informer. And the only reason that that is pertinent to this podcast is due to the fact that it was set to come to Switch 2 on October 3rd. And unfortunately, that is no longer the case. That version has been delayed, but the thing that has me a little bit concerned is it has not been delayed to any specific date.
Mhm.
Instead, it is an indefinite delay, which could really mean anything. It could mean it's a week. It could mean it is a year. It could mean what I think is worth noting: the last time 2K indefinitely delayed a Switch port, it was Marvel's Midnight Suns, which you may remember was eventually just outright canceled. So hopefully that doesn't
Mhm.
happen here. The something that initially concerned me was that they also canceled all digital pre-orders for the game. But according to Gearbox, that is Nintendo's policy. If you delay a game, you have to cancel the digital pre-orders. So that might not actually be indicative of how long the delay would be. When they canceled it, I was like, oh, this is like in trouble. But
Mhm.
I think it might just be Nintendo's policy if like it's either if you delay it without a specific date or if you delay it at all, you have to
Mhm.
cancel the digital pre-orders. And if you listen to this show week by week, you actually may remember that Kleinfeld from Controller Club, when I had him on a few weeks ago, he got his hands on the Switch 2 version at PAX West, and he said that it didn't run particularly well, but he did seem to indicate that it runs better than the Switch 2 port of Elden Ring. But
Mhm.
I think the broader problem here is that Borderlands 4 doesn't really seem to run well on any platform. So I reviewed it on PC and it seemed like it ran overall fine, but I also was reviewing it on like a ridiculously powerful rig. Um, so it's like a resource hog, but if you have the right tech, you can run it. Meanwhile, on PlayStation and Xbox, they seem to suffer from pretty pervasive memory leak, where basically the longer you play in a single sitting, the worse the performance gets. And like the only way to fix it is to like quit out of the game and restart it so the memory leak is slowed, and then it will slowly leak out over the course of like the next hour or two as you play it. And it doesn't seem like they have fixed that yet. So I'm wondering if the Switch 2 version was also suffering from that, in addition to also being less powerful hardware. But Jake, what do you make of this whole decision from Gearbox?
Yeah, I mean, it was certainly a surprise to see that it was delayed indefinitely. I feel like that doesn't happen too often, and when it does, my mind always jumps to the worst place, kinda like what you were saying, like, does that mean a year? How long does that take? I haven't played Borderlands 4 yet. I actually just picked it up last night on PC because some friends are playing, and I've heard about the technical stuff. I've got a pretty beefy PC, so not super worried about issues there. But yeah, I mean, I guess it seems like the right thing to do if the game's not running well and you think there's going to be backlash, you think people are going to be frustrated with the money they spent. I can't say I'm surprised. Uh, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. It is strange. It doesn't happen too often that we see something like this.
Yeah, so again, it was supposed to come out October 3rd. So what is that, 2 weeks from now?
Yeah.
1 week from now? A week and a half from now? And so we were right around the corner. And so they must have gotten to a point where they were like getting so much heat from the PS5 and Xbox Series X versions running so poorly that they probably were like, we need to focus on fixing like our flagship consoles. And
Hmm.
then this nice to have Switch 2 version that also isn't running particularly well give it more time so that it launches in a
Yeah.
good state. Like that's my speculation. I don't have any
Yeah.
inside sources on that, despite the fact that I, wrote the Borderlands 4 cover story.
Which I have on my coffee table.
Hey, thanks so much.
But
So
I
yeah.
would say, I will say to your point, I have to imagine that's probably why. If this issue is happening on every other platform, I imagine it's an issue on Switch, and they're thinking, well, if this issue persists on everything, we should fix this issue and then think about getting the Switch version running properly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that has to be the way that it goes for them, at least as far as like the decision making process. And you've seen, like, they're aware of it because we've seen the CEO of Gearbox, Randy Pitchford, on social media chopping it up with fans, defending it, and taking
Chopping it up is a good way to put it.
Yeah. That's the diplomatic way of saying, like, he's addressing it and also defending it in very aggressive fashions at times.
Yeah.
But I think that maybe the messaging got through to the team of like, we don't want even worse PR than we already have with the PS5 and Xbox versions. But
yeah,
I thoroughly enjoyed Borderlands 4. Some minor problems aside, like I think it's a very good game, and I would love it on the go. I mean, I guess I technically have it on the go because I reviewed it on Steam and I have a Steam Deck, so I could still play it on the go. But like, I don't know, it's nice to just bring my Switch 2 and not have to worry about the bulky Steam Deck.
Yeah. Yep. I feel that.
Yeah. So normally we don't do the beat by beat, like title update type of news stories on the show, but I've noticed a trend. And like, I was at a leadership conference this past weekend that my partner runs every year. And there was a guy who came up to me who knows what I do for a living. And he was like, hey, we need to talk about Mario Kart World. They've really screwed this up. Like, I'm really upset about Mario Kart World. And I've heard that sentiment from multiple people that, like, when Mario Kart World came out, people were like, oh yeah, this is a really good Mario Kart game. And then since that launch period, like the honeymoon phase is kind of over for this game, it feels like. And I think it's mainly due to Nintendo kind of constantly tinkering with the online functionality and the race structures and all this other stuff. Like, people just want to play like the 3-lap races, and they don't want to have to drive between the races if they don't want to. So this month's title update, the reason I want to bring it up is that it seems to address some of that stuff, which will hopefully make some of the more outspoken critics of this game a little bit happier. Because I do think that it's an overall very good Mario Kart game. But yes, I see why people are frustrated with it. So this is the 1.3.0 title update, and it's for the month of September, as you might have already guessed. And it allows you to join friends who are already playing Knockout Tour. So you select friends from the online play menu. There's also a new thing where 2 players can do free roam together while waiting for a full lobby to make room for them. And then they also made it so that if you open up the map on free roam, it'll show the P switches that you've already completed, as well as the Peach medallions that you've already collected. So some quality of life stuff there. And then I thought this was funny, given the fact that I did not believe that there was UFOs in this. And I thought friend of the show, Jesse Vitelli, was lying about the fact that he got the UFO abduction during his demo at the Switch 2 reveal.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Nintendo has increased the frequency of UFOs in free roam, so you're much more likely to see them. Plus, something that was interesting here, they increased the invincibility window after you get hit by an item. So, like, I guess you can't get hit by multiple items in as rapid succession. And then they also decreased the amount of time it takes for once, like, somebody grabs an item box for a new one to spawn in its place. And then probably the most important change here is when you're playing online in versus race and they're choosing the course, they have increased the frequency of lap type courses when you're choosing your next course. So that should make it so there are more 3-race courses or 3-race matches. 3-lap races. There we go. Some combination of words was going to form that sentence in online play. But what were your thoughts on Mario Kart World when it first hit, and has it changed in those 4 months since launch?
Yeah, I like Mario Kart. Mario Kart's never really been my thing. I think, as we talked about at the beginning, Smash Bros has always been my thing. While I've played pretty much every Mario Kart and I enjoy them, there's usually a point where I start playing and then a clear point where I stop playing, and I don't really return to it. With Smash Bros, it never ends. I keep coming back to it. And that happened with Worlds. World came out. It was a launch title, obviously, and it was a great launch title. You know, I played probably 20 or 30 hours of it. Was very invested, and then stopped. And I have no desire to go back to it. These title updates do sound pretty interesting. It is, I mean, just Nintendo supporting a game to this degree. It doesn't happen very often, so that has me interested. But I to be honest, I was really surprised that we didn't get an bigger update that was shown off during the direct we had a couple weeks ago, because you know, especially that $80 price tag, I kind of figured this would be a game that Nintendo is constantly adding new content to, some free DLC, paid DLC. Maybe that's still happening at some point. But right now, as good as this update sounds for the hardcore Mario Kart fans, it doesn't, it's not enough for me, I don't think.
As Tim Geddes said last week, we didn't need the $20 update to Donkey Kong Bonanza. That game just came out. We needed DLC for Mario Kart World. We needed more content in that game, which, you know, doesn't seem to be the case, at least yet. That game, I think, is due for some new content. And instead, we just keep getting kind of like these piecemeal title updates that just like feel like just like somebody who can't stop tinkering. But thankfully, these all seem like taking fan feedback into account.
Yeah, and maybe that's the point. You know, maybe they are trying to maybe they're trying to like get that formula, that foundation as solid as possible before they start building on top of it, which I understand. But as a Mario Kart casual, I wasn't really playing it thinking like, oh, the delay from when I pick up a random item box to when it actually shows up is too long. That wasn't really my concern. So this stuff doesn't really interest me. But yeah, I hope we see more, you know, I mean, and I'm sure we will. They added DLC to Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, like what, 6-7 years after that game
Many
came out.
years, yeah.
And even longer if you consider that game came out in what, 2014 on Wii U.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I agree with you 100% that there's really no statute of limitations when it comes to like when Nintendo could release new content for a Mario Kart game. So still holding out hope, but then again, I held out hope for the entirety of the Switch life cycle that we were going to get Mario Odyssey DLC, and that never happened.
Same.
So bummer. So speaking of kart racers, we actually have a new one out this week. And if you want my review of Sonic Racing CrossWorlds, you can head to GameInformer.com or just listen to last week's episode of All Things Nintendo. But I talked about how much crossover content is announced for CrossWorlds, and that's really something that is differentiating it from Mario Kart World. And that list only got longer this week as Sega announced a collection of Mega Man content coming to Sonic Racing CrossWorlds. Mega Man and Sonic have actually crossed over several times before, but it's usually in other media or in Super Smash Brothers or whatever. Like there's a Mario and Mega Man, or Mario and Mega Man, Sonic and Mega Man crossover comic that you can find, I think, under IDW. So that's kind of cool, but like, you know, it's a whole Blue Blur, Blue Bomber, both like 90s mascots for their respective companies. It's cool to see them back together. The DLC adds Proto Man and Mega Man as drivers, Rush, who is the iconic dog from Mega Man, as a vehicle, and a Mega Man course. And this is all in addition to crossovers like Persona, Like a Dragon, Hatsune Miku, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles have been announced, SpongeBob, all kinds of different crossovers. And I don't know how you feel about crossovers in rosters at this stage. I think that we talked about Smash Brothers being this incredible celebration of gaming. But I think that like we're in a different era here where like something like Fortnite has almost like made it feel not cheap, because Fortnite's still one of the biggest things on the planet, but you see like I've seen the term crossover slop be thrown around with Sonic Racing CrossWorlds, where it's like this game is such a good kart racer on its own that doesn't really need like to have SpongeBob and Patrick added to it, or does it need to have like, you know, Minecraft Steve as a playable character? And I don't know that it necessarily does, but like, have you soured on the idea of crossovers at all?
Oh, Oh man, I think it depends. I think if it makes sense for the game, for the franchise, then I'm okay with it. I think especially if the foundation is good. And it sounds like Sonic, was it CrossWorld Racing, has been very well received. It seems like people are very happy with it. And as someone who hasn't played it, and I don't know if I will, I'm not gonna lie, I was pretty excited to see Mega Man show up there. That said, I don't know. I guess there's just like a time and a place. Like I do think, one of the big news stories. I know this is a Nintendo podcast, so I don't want to get too off topic, but one of the big stories that with Battlefield 6 is that they are not doing that sort of crossover content, and people were very excited for it.
I
To the
am.
point, I am too. Like I don't want that in a Battlefield or even a Call of Duty game. Um, and I think it feels cheap in those kind of games. But in something like a kart racer and something like a fighting game like Smash Bros. And something like even Fortnite, like maybe I've just come to accept it and it's okay. I don't think I will ever get as excited as I did when they announced Joker for Smash Bros. I don't think anything could ever get me as excited as that did. But that's okay. It's how things go.
Yeah, but like the stated purpose of something like Smash Brothers is that it's a giant crossover. So that I don't
Yeah.
think feels cheap. Like I'm not
Hmm.
saying all crossovers are cheap. I think that like I would rather have things within the universe. Like when Mortal Kombat comes
Sure.
out
Yeah.
and they're like adding DLC, sometimes I'm like, okay, that's kind of cool to have like the T-800 from Terminator
Hmm.
in Mortal Kombat, but wouldn't it also be cool if we got like this character from the Mortal Kombat lore that like we've been wanting for a long time? Or like and then also like there's licensing things that happen which cause these things to be delisted. Like that's largely the speculation for why Mortal Kombat 9 is not available on any digital
Yeah.
storefronts, including Steam, which is a real shame because Mortal Kombat
Hmm.
9 is incredible and you can't even buy it on Steam, even though it has a store page and everything. And the thought process is that like because one of the horror movie characters that are in the as DLC, the licensing ran out, so they just can't sell that game anymore because the only version that's available is the complete edition, which has all the DLC included.
Mm. Yeah, I mean that is a great point that I didn't even think about. Yeah, I don't play Mortal Kombat, so I'm not super close to that. But yeah, I definitely think there's a time and place. But I think to your point, I really would like to see a lot of developers, I guess, kind of double down on the characters they've created, the characters within their own universe. And you know, Battlefield doesn't necessarily have like, a eclectic, interesting cast of characters, but I think, with Call of Duty, maybe they didn't need to put in Nicki Minaj or, some of those
Beavis and
wild
Butthead.
crossover, Beavis and Butthead. Yeah, there's a time and place, and I feel like a lot of companies just think it's an easy win to get in. Like, hey, we can activate a different fan group if we get this character in here and that'll get them excited and I don't know, I think people are getting tired of that.
Yeah, and with Sonic Racing CrossWorlds, I will say that they've already included like 99% of the Sonic characters that I care about. Like it's already a pretty robust roster. So it's not like we are getting these crossover characters at the expense of
Sure.
like, oh, we could have gotten Shadow in this. Like, no, Shadow's already in it.
Yeah.
And so like it feels less of that, but it's like, am I ever going to be excited to see SpongeBob like driving around in like a Sonic racing game? Probably not, but like that's not for me necessarily.
Yeah.
Like that's for like the kids who like want to play as SpongeBob in a racing game. Um, the other thing is that like there are some characters from the Sonic world, there's Sonic extended universe, I guess you could say, that I wouldn't mind. Like I would love to have some of like the comics characters. We've already gotten Sonic Prime, which was the Netflix series, like the multiversal Netflix series. Why not
Mhm.
add Sally from the Sonic cartoon and like all like the freedom fighters from that? Like that would be cool to like see a little nod to their existence because I don't think we've heard from them in any real like media. I don't know if they're still in the comics under IDW, but they were pretty prominent in the 90s. I think that'd be a fun nod to have them in the game. I don't know what Sega's stance is on those characters. But anyway, we're getting way off topic on this news story. Sonic Racing CrossWorlds is out now on Switch 1, and a Switch 2 version is set to come out before the end of the year. But if you want to pick up the Switch 1 version, it will be a $10 upgrade from the Switch 1 version to the Switch 2 version, which, will end up coming out in the wash just because the Switch 2 version is $10 more expensive anyway. So unless you get it on sale, it's going to be the same amount of money. So speaking of Sega, the company announced Yakuza Kiwami 3 as part of the RGG Summit that it held this week. And as the name implies, it is a remaster of Yakuza 3 that adds modern visuals, dubbed audio, as well as reworked combat mechanics. And this version actually goes a step further than a lot of other remasters because it features a team battle mode called Legendary Baddie and a second story mode following the antagonist of Yakuza 3, Yoshitaka Mine, called Dark Ties. So I actually looked this up because I was like, man, I feel like we've gotten a lot of Yakuza on Switch 2 lately. Yakuza 0 Director's Cut launched on Switch 2 alongside the console. Then they already announced that Yakuza Kiwami, which is a remaster of Yakuza 1, and Yakuza Kiwami 2, remaster of Yakuza 2, are hitting Switch 2 on November 13th. And then finally, Yakuza Kiwami 3 hits Switch 2 and every other major platform on February 12th. I don't think we've talked about Yakuza before, Jake. Are you a big Yakuza fan?
I not a big fan, but I appreciate it to no end. I have seen so many clips. I've played some of them. I've played most of Kiwami. I've played a good amount of Zero. I've played a lot of Like a Dragon. And I really, really like what I've played. I just haven't played enough to call myself a fan. I think my plan was to finally play through the Yakuza games as they come out on the Switch 2, because I got Zero at launch. They announced Kiwami and Kiwami 2 are coming, but time. I don't know if
Yeah,
I've got
exactly.
the time. Yeah.
Yeah, I would consider myself a Yakuza novice, which is to say I've put probably about 70 hours into the series.
Okay.
I've beaten 0 and Kiwami 1, and I have played a good chunk of Yakuza 7 Like a Dragon and Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. But outside of that, haven't played much else. So it's funny because you say oh, I've played 70 hours of this game, and or 70 hours of this series, and you're like, oh wow, that's a lot of time. It's not in the grand scheme of things. These games are pretty substantial.
Yeah, I think I put in 70 hours in Like a Dragon alone in order to play Infinite Wealth, but I never ended up finishing it, so I didn't end up playing Infinite Wealth. But I mean, I adore what I played. I really like the tone, the vibe, the combat. It's a time thing.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, hey, I've had I don't think it's breaking any kind of embargoes or anything to say. I've had Ghost of Yote, which is one of my most anticipated games of 2025, for probably 3 or 4 weeks now, and I have not even booted it up because I have just been so busy with other things. So I definitely feel you there. Jake, I alluded to this earlier, but I've got some good news, bad news. Good news, we got a surprise Fire Emblem game that came out this week. Bad news, it's a free-to-start mobile game called Fire Emblem Shadows. And I've not yet had a chance to check this out, but from all accounts that I've seen on social media, it seems like it's kind of a mess. So it is a hybrid of real-time strategy and social deduction. So I'm thinking maybe something like Pokemon Unite meets Among Us, but Fire Emblem. And I don't know, maybe Pokemon Unite isn't the best example, but I don't know how much StarCraft or Halo Wars would resonate with my listeners to this Nintendo podcast. So basically, teams of 3 go into a battle, and one of them is secretly a disciple of Shadow. And I didn't play it at all. I haven't really looked at any of the videos or anything like that. But friend of the show and former guest Giovanni Colantonio from Polygon had a Blue Sky thread last night where he shared his thoughts while he was dipping his toe in. And in lieu of bringing him on here just for this one game, here are his thoughts via his Blue Sky, which is at Mario Prime. Quote, "There are only 3 characters on a team, including yourself. So if one person gets killed, only two people can be the bad guy. You, who did not do it, or the only other person who is alive. LMFAO. Next up, I feel like I'm going insane. I keep playing rounds to see if I'm just misunderstanding how it works, but I am not. You can also see when someone is attacking, so it's not even hiding who is doing it. Everyone just sees who is doing what at all times. What is happening? And then he finishes it off with, is this a prank? Am I alive? Where am I? So, Jake, were you aware that this came out? Like, it kind of hit late last night. And does this hybrid game, even if it's not necessarily executed particularly well, does it appeal to you? Does this hit that threshold you were talking about at the start of the show of, well, if they put out a Fire Emblem game today, I'd be like, oh yeah, I'll check it out.
I did know it was a thing. I think like many people, I saw that press release and I was like, okay. And then I immediately tried to download it. It wasn't available yet. And then I got home and saw that people were playing it, and I saw one screenshot and I shook my head and was like, I'm good. I'm gonna play something else tonight. Yeah, doesn't really interest me. Like I said at the front, I do love Fire Emblem. I gave Fire Emblem, that other mobile game, a pretty good shot. Like I played a good amount of that game. But for me, it's the combat that I like. And looking at that, it didn't seem like my cup of tea at all.
Fair enough. Yeah, I don't see myself checking this out. But if that sounds like it's interesting to you, it is available now on mobile devices. Jake, in the main segment, we will be talking all about Pokemon as well as Hades 2. But if you are a fan of Hades, there's another game that may be worth checking out. And I've already reviewed it. It's TMNT Splintered Fate. You can read my review on GameInformer.com or go listen to an old episode of this podcast. But basically, the gist is that it's like a TMNT licensed Hades game by another company. And it's not quite as good as regular old Hades, but really what is. But it's still pretty good. And earlier this year, they put out a DLC pack that added more story content and made Casey Jones the 5th playable character. And then this week, they announced that next week, they will be releasing another DLC pack, and this one adds Metalhead as the 6th playable character. There will also be a free update that adds an arcade mode that introduces even more variables into this co-op roguelike, plus new enemies, new locations, and new artifacts. The TMNT Splintered Fate Metalhead DLC and this free update both arrive on September 30th. So, Jake, I know you enjoy yourself some Hades, but did you ever play Splintered Fate?
I did not. I actually didn't even know about this until right now, but I might have to check it out.
It started off on Apple Arcade, and then I think it was there for 2 years exclusively, and then it made the leap to Switch last year, and then PS5 and Xbox this year. So it is relatively new on consoles, but it's been around on Apple Arcade for quite some time.
That's good to know. That sounds like once I've had my Hades 2 fix, and if I want more, I can check this out.
All right. Well, I would recommend anybody who wants to check out additional Hades-esque content once you're done playing Hades 1 and Hades 2. TMNT Splintered Fate, again, not reaching the heights of the Hades series, but still pretty respectable. And if you're a big TMNT fan like I am, I think it's pretty fun to see a lot of these characters you end up fighting and fighting alongside. But we are going to take our first break of this episode, and when we get back, we will be chatting about our time in Paris playing Pokémon Legends ZA, as well as Hades 2. We will be right back. We are back, and arguably the biggest remaining Nintendo exclusive for the rest of 2025 is Pokémon Legends ZA. That game takes place within the city limits of Lumio City, which is heavily inspired by Paris, France. And Jake, you and I traveled to the real world Lumio City to get our hands on that game. First of all, let's get this out of the way right now. Am I safe in saying that this is one of the coolest gaming events you've ever gone to?
Yeah, I would say so. I don't think much can top it, to be honest.
Yeah, so basically what happened was we got to go out to Paris, and Pokemon, turns out they have a little bit of money because they rented the Eiffel Tower. not the entire Eiffel Tower. There's like an event space that they rented. But still, we're sitting in the Eiffel Tower playing Pokemon Legends ZA, and they redid the room as like kind of like an upscale hotel that you're checking into. Like they gave us little like keys,
Yep.
and then you go into the space, and it's like set up like a cafe with an incredible view because you're in the Eiffel Tower. So of course you have an
Mhm.
incredible view of Paris. And yeah, then we got to like sit down and play the game for a little bit over an hour, I think, maybe around an hour. And
Mhm.
yeah, got to actually form our opinions based on all the different gameplay loops that are going to be expected to emerge during your gameplay. Uh, First of all, before we jump into Legends ZA, what are your thoughts on Pokemon Legends Arceus?
I loved Arceus. I thought it was exactly what Pokemon needed to kind of revitalize that formula to add some more excitement, particularly with the world, the way catching worked. I would say the one disappointment for me, and I think mostly just me from what I've talked to, is that I didn't really like the battling. I
Hmm.
thought it felt like a oversimplified version of the standard turn-based battles, which made sense. Battling is not the point of Arceus. The point is to explore, catch all these Pokemon. But still, as someone who is very invested in the battling, I dabble in competitive when I can. I was kind of hoping for a little more depth there that just wasn't quite there. Uh, that said, I am very excited for what they are doing with ZA.
So for me, coming into ZA, Legends is my favorite Pokemon game of the last 15 years. And Legends Arceus is. And so coming into
Mhm.
Legends ZA with them changing so much, it's no longer like distant past, which the Legends name kind of implies, right? It's just
Yeah, it was
it almost makes
surprising.
it seem like it's like, okay, well, this is like something that happened in the time of Legends
Mhm.
back in like, the prehistory of the Pokemon series, which is what you were doing in Arceus, right? You were building the Pokedex of the Hisui region and like kind of just like establishing the relationship between Pokemon and humans in that
Mhm.
region. And I was like, okay, well, that's cool. And then Legends ZA is like not only modern day, it takes place after X and Y.
Yeah.
And then it takes place entirely inside a city, which I was very apprehensive about because
Mhm.
my favorite part of Arceus is the exploration. And I'm like, all right, well, if like the exploration is just inside of a city, how like wondrous can it really be? How like it loses kind of that Breath of the Wild effect that you
Mhm.
have where you're just kind of going out into the wilderness and you have no idea what to expect. Where it's here, it's like, all right, I bet when I go into like this area, I'm going to see Pokemon. And when I go into this area, I'm going to see trainers, which is true. But I was apprehensive in that regard. And I came out of this pretty satisfied with what I saw. But coming into this demo, what was your hype level for Legend ZA?
So I'll walk you through this here. So when it was first announced and I saw that they were changing up the battle system, I immediately was a little deflated.
Mm.
The idea of a real time battle system did not interest me. I was hoping it would be like turn based and they would make it make it more on par with the mainline series. That said, once I got my hands on at Pokemon Worlds in August, I got to play a little bit of the combat. It was a very short demo, but then I started to come around on it, and I would say this demo, I'm sold in terms of combat at least. I think the combat has me very excited, probably the most excited out of everything I saw for ZA.
Yeah, the combat feels great. So we got to play, I think, in four distinct demos, right? Like the first one was
Yes.
the Wild Zone, and like I messed around
Hmm.
with the customization a little bit, and like got my character looking just how I wanted them to look. A lot of customization options if you poked
Yes.
around that menu as well. But
Thankfully.
yeah, so like I got my character looking pretty nifty, and like since it takes place in Lumio City, it's going to be a like a very fashion forward Pokemon game. They're
Hmm.
saying, so you can also style your hair in different ways. I didn't get a chance to experiment with that, but you could like change like each individual component of your outfit individually, which is great
Hmm.
because I remember Pokemon Red and Blue, not much customization.
No customization.
Yeah, exactly. You could change your name, that's it, or tell
Yep.
them your name, that's it. Uh, so the Wild Zone was the main part of this first demo that we had. We're
Mhm.
just bouncing around save files essentially, and the Wild Zone had like Baneri and Houndour and Binacle, and then there are also wild alpha Pokemon that are in these zones, which are, the Pokemon that you're walking on, just the normal Pokemon. You can like try to
Mhm.
sneak up on them and throw a Pokeball and not have to enter into a battle, or you can send your Pokemon out to attack them. And then once you do enough damage, just like in normal Pokemon games, you can send out the Pokeball or throw a Pokeball at them and try to catch them. And if you haven't figured out like what the battle system or even heard about what the battle system is, basically like the Pokemon that you send out has 4 moves, just like they do in like the mainline games, and each move is mapped to a different face button, and they
Mhm.
all operate on cooldowns, and like they're all based on the elements that they would be if they were in the mainline game. And you just basically have to like monitor what cooldowns are doing what when, and you attack based on that. And then also it's like timing and positioning take into account because it is
Mhm.
real time. But also for your trainer, you can get hit by the attacks, and if you take on enough damage yourself, you can also lose the battle and
Yep.
like have to like go back to the Pokemon Center and start the battle over, which happened to me one time with Houndoom, when I tried to take him on in the as the alpha Pokemon. So there were 3 alpha Pokemon in the Wild Zone. There was Houndoom, which was just kind of hanging out in like the main area. Pikachu was up on a roof. There was an alpha Pikachu, and then there was Binacle down in like this like area, like I guess by like a drainage
Oh, I
area.
didn't even find the Binacle.
Yeah, there was like a ladder that was kind of hidden off to the side that I climbed
Ah,
down,
okay.
and it was like 3 like little normal Binacles and then a giant alpha one, and like
Mhm.
they were ferocious. They were like harassing me, and like I couldn't like they all like swarmed me while I was fighting the alpha. So it was like I was fighting like all these Pokemon at once. So that was kind of cool. So I used Gyarados for the Houndoom because a water type, water
Yeah.
flying. And even then, I had to revive it. I sent out my Chikorita to like kind of sacrifice it while I took put like revive and
Yeah.
potions into the Gyarados and brought it back to life. And then Houndoom just wiped out my Chikorita. So then I brought the Gyarados back out and caught
Mhm.
the Houndoom. And I love that like you can access your box at any point. So like you catch your 7th Pokemon, for example, it gets sent to a box. You don't have to run back. It's just like Scarlet and Violet, where you can just
Yeah.
access them whenever. And then I also noticed in the menu, I was like, oh, my Chikorita is ready to evolve into Bayleaf. So I
Mhm.
clicked that and it evolved. And then I climbed up on the roof and there was a Pikachu, an alpha Pikachu up there. And I sent Bayleaf out and took care of that. And then the Binacle down there, I also used Bayleaf. And I tried to use the Pikachu, but I guess whatever measuring stick they have, because I don't know if there are badges in this. It's probably based on the rank that you have in the
I think it
ZA
is,
Royale,
yeah.
because the alpha Pikachu was a high enough level that it would not obey me whatsoever. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
Binacle, this will be a cinch with an alpha Pikachu. And then, nope.
I'm surprised you caught it. It just ran a train through my team. Like I everything I sent out, it just took out. And eventually it knocked me out and I got sent back to a Pokemon Center and then a demo person ran over and had me fast travel back to the Wild Zone. But yeah, I think for me, the Wild Zone and sort of the exploration is still the biggest question mark I have for this game. I'm sold on the combat. I'm excited for the overall concept. I like the character customization, but to your point, I think one of the best things about Arceus was that level of exploration. And the area we saw was pretty small. While I will say there were some cool secrets if you looked closely, like for instance, I didn't even find the Binacle. You found that ladder and were able to explore down there. So it seems like there are little passageways hidden that could have interesting rewards. But I think just the sheer scale of Arceus was so enticing, and I'm a little worried about just the size of these wild zones in particular, because that is where you're supposed to explore, catch Pokemon. And the area they had us in was like what, 3 city blocks, maybe?
Yeah,
3 small city
pretty
blocks. And
small.
to be fair, I check the map frequently. I don't know how often you did in it. And it definitely seemed like this wild zone was one of the smaller ones, maybe like medium size. It seemed like there were much bigger ones in other parts of the city. But I think that's probably the big question mark for me. There's other little question marks I have, but I'm very curious to see how this exploration works. Because another thing that Arceus did, if you remember, was that you had to catch multiple Pokemon in different ways. You had to interact with these Pokemon in different ways in order to fill out that Pokedex page. Considering this doesn't take place in the past, these Pokemon are known quantities. When you caught one, it just said Dex registered. I'm wondering how involved that aspect is. It seems
Mm-hmm.
like it may just kind of be more attuned to what we've seen in every other Pokemon game, where you just need to interact with it and then catch it, and then it's there and you can move on.
Yeah, I'm wondering how much, because like our stuff was all confined to either a preset battle
Mm-hmm.
or one of these designated zones. I'm wondering how much exploration there is out in like the city itself, because we did not get to do anything with that.
Yes.
And like you said,
Yep.
if you got knocked out and had to go back to the Pokemon Center, they just instantly fast traveled us back to the wild zone we were
Mm-hmm.
supposed to be in.
Yeah, and that is something I'm also super curious about, right? Because now I've seen the ZA stuff twice. I've seen the Mega Evolution battles or the Rogue Mega Evolution battles twice. Now seen the Wild Zone, but we haven't experienced just like what it's like to just wander around Lumios, which to me is something I'm also excited to do because I think Lumios is a great city. It's one of my favorite cities, as we'll find out later in this podcast. Spoiler, I guess. So I'm really curious to see if they kind of manage to elevate Lumios beyond just a imitation of, not an imitation, but a Paris inspired city that I'm used to the 2D version of, or 2 point, kind of 3D version of.
Yeah, and I wonder if like finding these zones, whether it's the wild zones or the battle zones, are going to be your rewards for exploration, because like maybe you have
Mm,
to like climb up to an area that you have to like find a special ladder for to reach this one
yeah.
wild zone where like this really rare Pokemon is going to be or something like that. I don't know. I'm just spitballing of like what could
Hmm.
possibly be the explorative element of this game that brings it on the level of like how much I enjoyed Legends Arceus, because that
Yeah.
is the one big question mark for me is like what what is going to be the enticing like, oh, what's around that corner
Hmm.
moment that I had with Arceus all the time.
Yeah.
So the next part that we got to play was the ZA Royale, which was in the battle zones. And I don't know about you, but I used the Fletchinder in most encounters, a flying fire type, and
Yeah.
a lot of the Pokemon that the trainers in this area had were weak to that. So I was like, great.
Hmm.
It was either they were weak to flying or weak to fire. So that ended up being kind of an all purpose Pokemon for me in this. But basically, you get once the sun goes down, you get dumped in. You can go into these battle zones where you go around taking on different trainers, and your goal is to collect as many points as possible in hopes of leveling up or ranking up to the next rank.
Hmm.
So we were going from W rank to V rank, and like the overarching thing is going from Z to A, as the name implies. And like in addition to like you can go head on at the trainers, and like if you walk into their eyesight like any other Pokemon game, you enter the battle, or you can sneak up on them and like send your Pokemon out and try to either hit them and start the battle with an advantage, or you can KO them if they're weak enough from just like the sneak attack, and that all gets you points for all the Pokemon that you defeat in this ZA Royale. And then if you get enough, you can participate in a rank up battle, which we'll talk about in a little bit here. But while you're going around, there's also items you can find in this area. There's a little bit of exploration in that regard. There's like side missions that you can pick up. So there's one that's like sneak up and attack with a normal attack, or
Yeah.
KO a Pokemon with a water attack, or knock out an unaware Pokemon with the first blow. And that all gets you prize medals, which can be traded in for TMs and other prizes.
Hmm.
So that's basically the gist of that. And there's also mega shards that you can harvest by sending a Pokemon out and attacking that. I'm not quite sure what the mega shards do. I'm assuming it, gives you energy to mega evolve.
Yeah. Something, because the way they've shown off Mega Evolutions and how they work in game has only been in those rogue mega battles. We haven't seen them in standard battles. So
Correct.
I imagine those shards maybe have something to do with which Pokemon you want to be able to mega evolve down the line, but it's just all speculation at this point.
Hmm. And then I'm assuming, like me, you got enough points to meet up with Rintaro, who is the kind of V ranked
Yep.
boss battle, and you had
Mm-hmm.
to go from W to V
Yep.
as your mission here. So he was pretty easy, I found. He had like the 3 elemental monkeys that
Yeah. Semi-Sage, Semi-Poor, and
Semi-Seer.
Semi-Seer. Semi-Seer. Yeah.
So I used Tepig. So every time we jumped into a different save file, we had a different team. So it was like wasn't like a continuous thing. So I had Chikorita in the first save. I had Totodile in the second save, and this one I had Tepig. So I got to use all 3 of the starters.
Mm-hmm.
And used Tepig against the Semi-Sage, Pikachu and Weepinbell against the Semi-Poor, and Staryu against the Semi-Seer. So I had a pretty strong elemental team as well. Do you remember what you used, or was it probably along those same lines?
I think it was around those same lines. I just kind of looked at, weaknesses and what could quickly defeat his Pokemon. I will say something that has me really excited about this and the combat is how they've, I guess, translated moves from that turn-based combat system to real time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a good example of this is in that fight, because one thing I noticed, while he was pretty easy, one thing he did do is that whenever my first super effective attack, he would throw up a Protect right away.
Mm-hmm.
And the way Protect works in this is that instead of protecting you for a turn, you are fully protected for a short period of time. And it's not only that move, but there are a bunch of other moves that have been reinterpreted to fit this style. I think one of my favorite examples was, I think it was probably Weepinbell maybe who had it. I don't remember, but they had Toxic Spikes, which in the turn-based games, if you're familiar, that kind of punished switch-in. So you'd switch in a different Pokemon and it would get poisoned. In this, they physically laid down poison spikes. And if your Pokemon came in contact with it, it would get poisoned. And there's a bunch of moves like that. And then I also kind of like really dug into the menus to kind of look at some of the move information. And instead of priority, they have speed now, which is kind of the same. But, a move like Quick Attack traditionally always goes first, right? Like that is the thing with Quick Attack. It has very high priority. There are very few moves that go before it other than like Protect or Fake Out. In this case, they have speed tiers, it seems. So when you use Quick Attack, it fires off right away versus something like Flame Wheel, where there's a bit of a charge up. So I think, I kind of teased it up front where how I really like the combat. And I think that's what has me so excited. And that battle against, what was his name? Rintaro. Kind of got the juices flowing in terms of like, okay, I'm curious to see how difficult this can get. I wonder how demanding it'll be. I wonder, like, will I need Protect on all my Pokemon to protect against more powerful moves that come my way? So I think there is something very exciting that they are working with here.
Definitely. And something I forgot to mention when we were talking about the ZA Royale is it seems like the day-night cycle is on a set timer. It's not like do what you got to do and like then it'll change automatically after you finish like ranking up or whatever. It was like I got a warning message like near the end of my time playing. It was like the sun is about to rise or something like that. So like you had to like
interesting.
Yeah, so like you only have a limited amount of time. But maybe that was just because I was getting close and like it wanted me to like install like some sense of urgency. We won't know for sure until the game actually comes out. But yeah, so with that victory over Rintaro, we ranked up from W to V. So just one more step towards reaching that ultimate goal of A. And then the final save file that we did was Rogue Mega Victory Bell, which we saw somewhat recently in like that kind of Resident Evil style reveal trailer that they put out. This fight was pretty interesting. So like we had the Frenzied Noble Pokemon in Pokemon Legends Arceus, which you basically like it was just you and the Pokemon in that game, and you were throwing like the calming bombs at them. And then once you calmed them enough, then you could put your Pokemon out to battle them in like the turn-based battles. This, your Pokemon are out the entire time. So I used Houndoom this entire battle.
Same.
And then I was fighting alongside Naveen, who is a member of your team in the game, like one of the NPCs that's on your team that you join in Pokemon Legends ZA. And Naveen sent out Ariados, which should be a good matchup, but seemed pretty useless outside of the aggro aspect of it and like attracting attention from Victory Bell.
Yeah.
There wasn't much damage being done from Ariados, but Houndoom on the other hand. So like Victory Bell was sending out like a lot of really like powerful attacks. Again, it's a mega Pokemon, so it's going to have powerful attacks, but like they were shooting out like these poison puddles. I don't know what exact attack
Mhm.
it was. It was shooting out projectiles, a lot of
Yeah,
powerful
some
attacks that,
AoE attacks.
yeah,
Yeah.
so you had to avoid it. Your Pokemon were getting hit by it. You could try to get them to avoid it. But as you fight it, it starts dropping these glowing orbs, and you have to go around and pick them up. And as you do that, it charges up your Mega Evolution gauge. And then once you get that gauge full, you can Mega Evolve any Pokemon that have Mega Evolution. 3 of the 6 that we had in our party, it was Absol, Gardevoir, and Houndoom could Mega
Mhm.
Evolve. And I just stuck with Houndoom the entire time.
I did too. I wanted to switch to a different one just to see if you could Mega Evolve multiple Pokemon in one fight, which I wasn't able to confirm, but I believe Casey DeFreitas from IGN did confirm that you
Okay.
can Mega Evolve multiple Pokemon in those fights at least. I'm not really sure how it works outside of those rogue Mega Evolutions. I wonder if you're still limited if you're Mega Evolving in a standard battle. Um, but yeah, same thing with me. I really wanted to get Mega Gardevoir out there, but I Houndoom was just doing too much work. And at one point, Houndoom did actually get knocked out, and I had to heal Houndoom while I sent something else out. And I very quickly was like, no, this isn't going to work. And I
Yeah.
pulled him back out and sent Houndoom.
To your point, I did Mega Evolve Houndoom twice in that
Mm,
battle. But the thing is you would need the resource to Mega Evolve him. And you get that resource in this rogue Mega Pokemon battle because they're dropping
yes.
the
Yeah.
orbs. So maybe you can do it in a regular battle, but you might not have the resources to do it because you probably need
Mm.
enough Mega Shards that you get within the ZA Royale. That's my speculation anyway. So I think you mechanically can. It's just a matter of if you have the resources to do it.
I think that's a pretty good guess because the other thing I noticed too was, I think it's been said already that your mega evolutions are on a timer, so it does kind of go down. You can watch the meter train, but if you pick up those orbs while it's mega evolved, it'll increase it a little, so you can kind of fight against that timer.
Mm-hmm. So I asked you what your hype level was coming into this demo. You had played it at Pokemon Worlds already, but how
Mhm.
did your hype level change after this extended demo that we got to play in Paris?
I'm definitely more hyped. Man, to be honest, I'm like such a Pokemon mark, at least when it comes to the mainline stuff, when it comes to the video games in particular. So I am going to play and likely be excited for it no matter what. It's just kind of what it actually ends up being, where I kind of adjust my opinions, expectations. But I would say I'm very excited. This is my most anticipated game for the rest of the year. I would say
Mm.
maybe Metroid Prime 4 kind of nudges it out a little bit, but uh, yeah, I can't wait to play more. I think that was probably the biggest takeaway from playing this demo was I really want to play more. I could see myself spending a lot of time collecting all of the Pokemon in that dex. I'm super curious about the multiplayer. I don't know if you saw the multiplayer trailer, that like 4-player free for all sort
Yeah.
of mode that they added, which I was kind of hoping we might get more insight on. We didn't. Uh, Another big question I have is one of my favorite things about Arceus was the regional forms, the Hisuian forms of like Growlithe and Scyther, like Cleavor ended up being a thing. I'm really curious to see if there's any of that or if these new mega evolutions are kind of going to fill that spot.
Yeah, they haven't talked about that at all, huh? And
They
it's
haven't,
like
no.
3 weeks away. So you think they would
Yeah.
have by now if there were. But they're also very guarded about like
Oh, yeah.
secrets and like
Mhm.
if there's something that they don't want to talk about, they will keep that a secret until you play the game. For instance, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet's frame rate that was kept a secret for a very long time
Yeah.
now. I do think I've said this in my preview that you can read over on GameInformer.com that I do think that Pokemon Scarlet and Violet deserves a critical reevaluation if you on Switch 2 it anyway. But like Pokemon Legends ZA comes to Switch 2 and Switch on October
Mhm.
16th. And on the note of Scarlet and Violet, I think it's worth bringing up that we only got our hands on the Switch 2 version.
Yes.
So while it ran well on Switch 2, we have no idea how this will run on Switch 1. And given Game Freak's troubles in developing for Switch 1, I do think that's
Mhm.
worth noting on or noting. And I mean, you didn't come out of the demo with any concerns on the Switch 2 front, did you?
No, I mean, frame rate wise, it ran pretty flawlessly. I didn't notice any issues. I mean, there's definitely criticisms to be made about the visual style and sort of the simplicity there that I think are totally valid. Like there was that period with Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee where I felt like they landed on such a beautiful art style, and I was like, are these what Pokemon games are going to look like going forward? Didn't quite pan out that way, which is a little bit of a bummer. And I think while ZA, from what I saw, all of the Pokemon look very spirited and detailed and exciting, the world itself might be a little bland. We only saw a small slice. Don't want to speak too much on that. But I will say, if you don't own a Switch 2, I would definitely wait to see how that game performs on Switch 1 before you go pick it up.
Definitely.
If that's an issue for you. I say that as someone who powered through Scarlet and Violet. While I did notice all of the frame rate issues, it didn't feel as important to me for a Pokemon game as it would, a nail-biting action game.
Like Elden Ring, which I've heard does not run particularly well and has
Yeah.
some input lag on Switch 2, which hopefully they iron out, because that's a very important game to run well.
Yes, absolutely.
Also, before we close out this main segment, we would be remiss if we did not acknowledge that one of the most anticipated games of 2025 came out this very week, and it is a console exclusive to the Switch and Switch 2. Hades 2 is out now, and Jake, you have spent some time with it, so I'm going to turn the floor over to you. I am not the biggest Hades fan. Like, I played an okay amount of it when the original came out. I have not touched Hades 2 yet, so tell me your initial thoughts of this game, and should we be excited for it?
Yeah, so admittedly, I did not play any of Hades in Hades 2 or Hades 1 for that matter in the early access period. I really like Supergiant's work. I trust them. I want to wait for the full release. So I did the same with Hades 2. So I have only played a few hours at this point. I will say right off the bat, I'm finding it more overwhelming than Hades 1. I feel like Hades 1 at the beginning did a very good job of just getting you into run after run after run. You'd still talk to characters, you'd still upgrade Zagreus, but you hit the ground running. And in this, the opening feels a little bit slower. Yeah, you start the game, you do a run, and then you're back. There's like a whole farming mechanic. There's some upgrades you need to pay attention to. It seems like there is a lot going on. Now, I don't think that is a bad thing. I just think I need to really spend more time with this game in order to get a handle on all of that. And, that said, mechanically, it is very, very solid. It feels great to play. The art is amazing. The music is incredible too. I think that's something that I know a lot of people mention in their reviews, but often gets forgotten when we talk about how well these games play. The music is amazing.
Darren Korb is an all-timer in terms of composers at this point. Like, he just doesn't miss. He's Supergiant's in studio composer, and he has put out banger after banger.
Truly, and you can see it here. It feels like the soundtrack feels even more ambitious than their previous games, which makes sense. So, I am super excited to play more. I'm really liking what I'm playing. I would just say I haven't really grasped everything that this game is offering, and it sounds like I need to play a lot more in order to get to that point. And I will say reviews dropped yesterday, and I think it got a 10 from GameSpot, IGN, and Game Informer, right? Like,
I haven't
the
checked
big
IGN,
three
but yeah,
all gave it a 10, which is, pretty unheard of. I feel like usually it's 1, sometimes 2, but very rarely is it 3.
Yeah, it got a 10 from IGN as well. I was going to say, I saw that GameSpot gave it a 10. I know that our very own Charles Hart
right?
over at Game Informer gave it a 10. And it's funny because Charles has been with Game Informer for a couple of years now. I've been with Game Informer for coming up on 11 years. I've never given a 10. My highest review scores are 9.5 for Forza Horizon 5 and Metroid Prime Remastered. I've never gone higher than 9.5. he's been here a couple of years and he's handing out tens, but I'm not gonna fault him because it seems like that's a pretty solid score for this game because like I mean he's not alone in that regard.
Yeah. A little off topic, but is there a game you didn't review that you would have given a 10?
Oh man, probably Breath of the Wild.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, Breath of the Wild and maybe I mean maybe Overwatch, which both of those got tens anyway from Game Informer, so it doesn't matter. But yeah, I was obsessed with Overwatch for a really long time, and I probably would have given that a 10. But yeah, I mean, I think that I having not played a ton of Hades 1, you describing it as like it feels overwhelming. How much time did you put into Hades 1?
I only completed Hades 1 once, which
Okay.
is not nearly the amount that many other people have played, and I know the game adds a lot more on repeat playthroughs. I plan on playing Hades 2 more than that. Our count, God, off the top of my head, I don't really know. It was kind of split between PC and Switch. I will say one thing with Hades 2 that I love, and I always love when a game does it, is there's cross saves between
Oh yeah.
PC and Switch, which is so nice. I'm sure it's a pain to get that tech working, but when it does, it's wonderful.
Yeah, I mean that was something that was huge for us in terms of like getting our review out because Charles had been playing the early access version, so he had already had some
Mhm.
progress that he had made, and then he was able to complete his playthrough on the Switch 2 when we got code for accessing it ahead of time. But yeah, like with you saying like Hades 2 feels a little bit overwhelming, I'm almost wondering if I should go back and play Hades 1 before I jump into Hades 2. Like I've heard a lot of people say like Silk Song, like it just kind of assumes you've played the original Hollow Knight and doesn't really give you a lot of training wheels the way Hollow Knight 1 did at first.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if maybe Hades 2 has a little bit of that as well.
I don't think it's the same way. Like I played Silk Song and I played a lot of Hollow Knight as well. I think it's more of a difficulty thing with Silk Song to Hollow Knight. While I think with Hades, it's more of just a adding new mechanics and things outside of combat itself. Like there are new things in combat, but I would say a lot of the friction that I'm coming across just has to do with interacting with people, you know, basically getting ready for runs as opposed to doing the actual run. So
Mhm.
I don't think you'll need to play Hades 1 to play Hades 2. That said, Hades 1 is very good. It's worth playing at some point. But if you need to play Hades 2 for game of the year talk and consideration, I think you're fine going right to that.
All right. Well, Hades 2 is out now on Switch, Switch 2, and PC. And if you buy the Switch 1 version now, for like if you don't have a Switch 2 yet, you can upgrade to the Switch 2 version at no additional cost. And if you want to read more, you can go to GameInformer.com or GameSpot.com and find two distinct, well written reviews that give it a 10 out of 10. We are going to take one final break, and when we get back, we're going to do definitive ranking and get Jake's eShop gem of the week. We will be right back. We are back, and it is time for definitive ranking, a recurring segment where we take a Nintendo topic and give our own personal top 5 lists. Since this episode was all about Pokemon Legends ZA, Jake, I want to get your top 5 Pokemon towns or cities. So start at 5, count it down to 1, give me a sentence or two about each.
Okay. All right. Number 5 is Lavender Town. I should preface a lot of these are going to be Gen 1, Gen 2 because those were the peak years for me.
Same.
The reason I picked Lavender Town is because of the music. That creepy dut, 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 just I'll never forget. I also like the idea of going to a place where it's like a Pokemon graveyard. There's something very dark about that I don't think they'll ever do again.
And the story with Marowak and Cubone was great.
It's great. Yeah, I really like all the details around Lavender Town. I'd be really curious to see them revisit that and more of a because you look at it now and there's 3 buildings. I think it's the tower and then 2 houses and a Pokemon Center. The next one is Lumia City.
Mm.
Lumia City. This is I guess a newer generation. Not really, considering where we are now. But uh, Lumio City was like the first big, impressive city in my mind when it came to Pokemon.
Hmm.
I also really like that generation. I thought that was a pretty solid generation, and I like the big tower in the center. Number 3 is Sutopolis. This was from the third generation, and it is God, I forget I think it's the town with the 8th gym leader there, and you have to dive under in order to get to that town. And when you pop up, it is
All right.
like a stark white town. It had a very distinct style. I feel like Gen 3 was really when they were trying to give each town a specific identity. It also had Fort Tree Town, which I don't know if you remember, was the town where all the houses were on trees. They were like a bunch of tree houses. And I really like that as well.
It's
But
like
I had to go
Ewok
with
Village.
Sutopolis. Exactly. It kind of is Ewok Village. Number 2 is Goldenrod.
Hmm.
I really like, everything. I like the underground mall in Goldenrod. I like the what is it? What do they call it? The maglev train or whatever
Yeah.
that you later find out can take you from one region to the other. And the radio tower. And I think one of my favorite things about that game, at least at the time, was that you had your little radio that you could like tune in and listen to radio. Not really listen. You read through like tips and things. I thought that was really neat. And I think there's a lot of room to expand on Goldenrod. I think there's some cool stuff there. Number 1 for me though is Saffron Town. Saffron Town is the biggest city in Gen 1, and I think as a kid that town blew me away because it felt like a city. Everything leading up to that felt more like towns, and then you get to Saffron and it's like, whoa, there's a giant mall, there's a big building that Team Rocket has taken over. I think like 90% of the buildings you couldn't actually go into, but the
Hmm.
ones you could, I thought were pretty cool.
And
They also had the fake gym.
you're right that it is Saffron City. It's not even
Yeah,
Saffron Town. It is
yeah,
actually the one of the few in Gen 1 that is a city.
yeah. It
And
go ahead.
I would say it's also it was the representation of Pokemon in Super Smash Bros. 64.
Yes, yes, and another big reason why I like that city quite a bit. And I also like Sabrina as a gym leader. I liked
Yes.
psychic type Pokemon, even though at the time options were pretty limited. There was like what 3 or 4 psychic Pokemon to pick from. So, but still, I think Saffron will always be number 1, and especially seeing how they recreated it in Let's Go was amazing.
It was so good. We have a good amount of crossover, and some of them are even in the same spots. Number 5 for me, Lavender Town from Red and Blue.
Okay.
Um, Same reasons as you. Creepy factor. One of the
Yep.
cooler like sub stories of Pokemon Red, Blue, Yellow in going through the tower and investigating this ghost, and then using the Sylph
Mhm.
scope to uncover that it was Marowak. Very very cool area that I think was a little bit ahead of its time in terms of like storytelling within the Pokemon
Yeah.
franchise. Number 4 for me, I wanted to have some Scarlet and Violet representation. So I put Levincia, which was the electricity town. And I
Yeah.
think it's the most impressive city that
Mhm.
is in Scarlet and Violet. And I think it's kind of the best representation of what a 3D Pokemon city could look like and feel like in future
Yeah.
games. So that was my pick for like the newer generations.
I
Number
agree.
3, go ahead.
I like how what is it? The arena's kind of in the center, and there's like an east
Yeah.
and west side of the city. Uh, yeah, I like that city a lot.
That's a cool one. Number 3 for me is Goldenrod from Gold and Silver. A lot of the same reasons: the radio tower, the
Yep.
underground mall, the game corner. Number 2 for me is Lumio City, so higher than yours
Okay.
and your ranking. And if I'm not mistaken, you talked about this a little bit, but this is like the first like big 3D area in a Pokemon game, right? In X and Y.
Yeah.
Like I remember you got there and like the camera kind of swung down a little bit, and you're
Hmm.
riding, you can skate around. I remember roller skating around, right? Like
Yep. Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
one of the ways you get around in X and Y. If I'm not losing my mind. So yeah, that was like really mind blowing for me. I'm like, oh, this is a little bit different from every other city I've ever
Hmm.
been in a Pokemon game. And then my number 1, you could probably guess, is Saffron City,
Oh, as
because
well. All right.
that was like the first time that I got like a sense of scale in a Pokemon
Yeah.
game. And
Totally.
it felt like there was just like an endless amount of stuff I could do. There was the game
Hmm.
corner. There was like you said, the fake gym with
Yeah.
you could choose Hitmonchan or Hitmonlee. Like the game corner, you could like really save up your tokens and get a
Get that
Dratini,
Dratini. Yeah.
or you could just like go cheap with it and get a an Abra, which was the
Hmm.
easiest way to get an Abra at the time.
Yeah.
Um, what else was there? Because like wasn't there like
Well,
something with like the evolutions as well, or
so that was Celadon City,
Celadon? Right,
but
right, right.
but Celadon City and Saffron City are like literally side by side. If you remember, there's just that path. It's like
Yeah.
one screen. So I think of them as pretty connected anyway. Because I also love Celadon City as well. But yeah, I think Saffron was just the scale, like you're saying, is just it felt like you finally made it to the big city, you know, after starting in your tiny pallet town and moving up to Viridian, which is a little bigger and pewter, but then you get to Saffron. It's like, whoa. And
So
also the whole plot with the guy who won't let you in unless you get him lemonade or
yeah,
whatever, or iced tea, and you have to find that vending
vending
machine on the
machine.
roof of the mall.
Well, it's better than having to rub the guy's back like you did on the Saint Anne. That was the ship,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And there's also in Saffron like that whole subplot with Team Rocket, where like
Hmm.
that's like your real first encounter with Giovanni, isn't it?
I think so. And that dungeon where you're going up was the Silphco Tower is arduous. That's quite the it's quite the adventure.
It is. And it's hilarious because like we've talked about a couple times on this episode, like there are so many things where it's like, "Oh, this blew my mind when I was a kid." And it's hilarious when you
Mhm.
look back today cuz it's like
Yeah.
incredibly small by
Yeah.
any other RPG standards, but
Incredibly small. Most of the buildings don't have doors.
yeah. But also you can find Game Freak in there, right? Like isn't Saffron supposed to be
I think that's Celadon as well.
okay, so it's one of those two,
It's
yeah.
super connected, yeah. And you can, if you complete the Pokedex, you can like talk to some of the original creators.
And was in the Sylph Tower, isn't that where like that lore of like Mew and Mewtwo and like, you know, isn't that like no, is that the power plant where they have like the diaries of like we created a clone, Mewtwo,
That's I think you find that in the mansion in Cinnabad or
Cinnabar?
Cinnabar Island.
Okay, I'm getting all
But
my
I think
wires crossed here. I'm a fake
they're
Pokemon
all
fan
kind of
alert.
they're all kind of connected though, you know? Like I
Okay.
think the electric plant kind of hints at some of that as well.
Well, that's where all the Dittos are, right?
I think so. They're
Or
like hanging out outside the electric plant, I
something
remember.
like that.
And
I don't
then
know. I it's
yeah,
been several years since I've played a Gen 1 game. I should go back. I love those games.
they're so good. I recommend I there's some very good ROM hacks, especially of like Fire Red and Leaf Green that kind of shake up the formula, add some Pokemon from other games that are quite fun. I think Radical Red is
Mm.
a big one that I'd recommend. If you ever get the urge, if you've got an analog pocket, very easy to set up on that thing.
All right, I'll keep that in mind. But Jake, we are coming down to the end of the show here, which means that it is time for the eShop Gem of the Week. It is a chance to
Mhm.
give a shout out to a game that is on the eShop that might not otherwise get shine on this podcast. Jake, what is your eShop Gem of the Week?
My gem of the week is a game that came out last year called Lorelei and the Laser Eyes. This is a puzzle horror game, I guess. I would say light horror, but it does a lot of things that are very unsettling. Kind of in the way that, we're talking about Lavender Town. Like almost its sparseness is what makes it unsettling.
Mm.
But it is a very brilliantly designed puzzle game with a fascinating story that really keeps you on your toes. And this is the kind of game where you need to break out a notebook. You need to be taking notes. Uh, I would dream about this game. I swear to you, I got so invested in some of these puzzles that I would go to bed and I would wake up and I'd realize I had a dream about a certain solution. And immediately, it didn't matter if I had to go to work. It didn't matter what I was doing. I'd have to start that game and try this puzzle. And if it worked, it is an amazing high. But it also plays on some very interesting expectations in terms of video games, particularly classic video games. I don't want to spoil exactly what it does, but it does some really mind-blowing things. It is a very easy recommendation. I highly recommend playing it with a friend or a partner, because solving those puzzles with someone else, maybe getting some different perspectives on things, is amazing. I don't want to say too much because I think so much of the wow factor lies in what you don't know going into it. But yeah, without a doubt, I think it is one of my favorite games of the last 5 years, and I don't think a lot of people talked about it.
I've heard a lot of people say that it is one of the best indie games, really, of like the last decade. And Jill Grote, who is former Game Informer editor, but she runs the Indie Informer now, I think she highlighted it when one of the times that I had her on, where we just basically run down all the best recent indie games, and she was pretty stoked on it. But it hasn't been, I don't think, an official eShop Gem of the Week. So you are doing the honors of that here.
I'm glad to be the one.
Yes. It came out May 2024 and is normally $25, but it's on sale currently for $17.50. So if you want to check it out, there's a game that you can throw on top of your pile of all the other games that we've been talking about, because there's a lot of video games right now.
There's a lot.
But Jake, thank you so much for joining me for this episode of All Things Nintendo.
Thanks for having me. This was a blast.
This is a super jam-packed episode, and I really appreciate you joining me. And thank you so much, everyone, for listening. As you know, my Patreon and the associated Discord server are the best ways to get any questions or comments in, but you can also get in touch with me at brian@allthingsnintendo.com, or hit me up on Blue Sky or Instagram at Brian P. Shea. Jake, tell everyone where they can find you online.
I am at Instagram and Blue Sky at Jacob Deck. I don't post too much, though. I mean, you'll probably see more of my stuff on youtube.com/GameSpot. We do a lot of videos there, including a preview for Pokémon Legends EA. So if you want more information on what I saw, maybe check it out.
That is our show for this week. Thank you again so much for listening. Take care. We'll see you next time. Hey everyone, thank you so much for listening to this episode of All Things Nintendo. Before we get out of here, I just want to give a special shout out to the $10 patrons of the show. Alex Stadnick, Andy Junkins, Ben Richland, Chaps My Ass, Dusty Beeman, Ian T. Clark, Jason Thompson, Jawar Hello, Johnny Five, Jose Villalobos, Joshua DeProy, KC Radio Man, Cody Gibson, Creeper 207, Paul at Drunk on Mako, Pratable, Rob McCann, Bobby Mac 265, Robert Sosa, Roberto Nieves, Roger Reichert, Russell Sayer, Smithy Poo, and Zek 3 Swords Sama. Thank you so much for your continued support. You help keep this show alive.